The Grants Office is an office from the Department of Development Grant Office, headed by Pierre Legrain, its director, and Daniel Arzul, its deputy director. It's one of the offices, of the 4 offices of the department. One of the other offices are the Representation and Information of Europe, headed by David Itier. Then we have the Mapping and Scientific Communication Office, headed by Daniel Arzul, and the Partnership and Incentive Programs Office, headed by Mallory Perrin-Wolf. Our mission in the Grants Office is to advise and assist all the Institut Pasteur researchers in the preparation, negotiation, and management of their grant applications submitted to either national, European, or international funding organizations. Our team, we are 10 people in our team. We have a team manager, which is going to come soon. We hire 7 project managers, and we also have 2 administrative assistants. Our expertise is in French grants, H2020 Collaborative and Marie Curie, European projects, pre- and post-awards, ERC grants, international grants, scientific review, ethical and regulatory issues for both human and animal aspects. We are working for Institut Pasteur Paris and also International Network of Institut Pasteur. We are working all together with the other offices all along the awards life, and especially with David Itier, with the Bureau of EU Affairs. We are working with you on the pre-award French international grants process and on the post-award grants process.
So the BPM is actually an electronic tool which centralizes all the submission of funding in a Pasteur. Most of them, you have special cases which are not dealt by the grants office, but all the rest should be on the BPM because it's like a centralized tool. And who's concerned, what's concerned, it's you as applicants. You can be, I think most of you here will be not yet coordinators of project, but it concerns if you're PI, coordinators of projects, simple partners, or you are applying for funding for equipment, consumables, or even for fellowships. So that's your case. So how do you submit? How does this process work? You have to log in at this address. You can find it in the web campus. And when you arrive at this welcome page, you should log in. There's English version available as well. And so after you have logged in, you will arrive on the second page where you will need to create your application. Usually it will be on this grant application SCR. So that's you click OK. And then it will generate a grant form with some pre-filled information about you. I mean, your email address, the head of your unit, etc. But there are other mandatory fields which need to be filled by you. Because the more complete the information is, the easier it will be for us downstream to deal with your submission, which you have been put, which will you put on this tool. So important information concerns your gestionnaire, your accounts manager, but you also need to put if you know the funding organization, you should put it here because it helps us as well. If not, sometimes this is wrongly put, and when we try to find the deadlines and everything, we actually lose a bit of time. So please be careful about this, and then you can just follow the information. It's quite clear. So after you have filled in information about yourself and put the gestionnaire and everything about your project, you should put the more complete the file is, the better. So the scientific part, the budgets, etc. And once everything is filled, you should click on the send button. So what will happen? You can save it. You can press save and come back later on to add more files, etc. And once you are done, you are happy with the file submission, you press enter, and then your head of unit will get the message to approve or ask you to revise your file. to show.
Okay, I'm going to tell you about national grants through key questions you may have. Who can apply for a postdoctoral fellowship? Usually it's students having a PhD from a French university or from a foreign university. At least you have to make sure that you will have your PhD before the grant starts. About the host institution, depending to the grant, you can be asked to find your host institution with a specific agreement like CNRS, INSERM, or etc. Maybe you can choose your host institution in any French host, host institution. You may be asked to choose in the list of countries, or you can be free to choose any country in the world for your host institution. About the amount and the payment of the grant, you can be paid for the total amount of your postdoctoral fellowship salary, or your salary can be paid just in part, and in that case you should make sure that your host institution can give you a top-up so you can go through the grant. The payment of the grant is made to the host institution that will pay you after. Who is financing postdoctoral fellowships? Usually it's national foundations working on specific topics like la Ligue nationale contre le cancer or ARC. National foundations having interest for science in general, like la Fondation pour la Recherche Médicale. Research funds as philanthropic initiatives of some groups, like la Fondation AXA or other, or national institutions like la Région Île-de-France or other institutions. How and when to find a grant? You can find your grant with personal mapping. You can also use the web campus and the BIP, where we are posting weekly a list of opportunities, not only for postdoctoral fellowships, but there are some that you can find there. And concerning when to find your call, sometimes they are yearly or on a pluriannual basis. What is the application like? Most of the time they are online, and they have one or more stages, like proposal, full proposal, or interview. Who should you contact? You should contact your team manager to make sure that it's possible to do the postdoctoral fellowships with him, because sometimes you can just ask for one postdoc, and if there are other people asking for the same grant, it can be a problem. And also for the top-up for your salary. You also need to call the grant office concerning all the things I've told you before, to have help and support from a project manager, and also to put your project on BPM. Monitoring the grant, how does it work when your application is successful? You will receive a letter of acceptance or an email, and the operating contacts will prepare your agreement. The grant starts at the host institution, and you will stay a member of the host institution. Then the grant will end, and you may have to write a short summary of what you did during the grant.
So before I start with, I've been asked to talk a bit about Marie Curie individual fellowships, also Human Frontier and EMBO, but I think later on we'll be having your fellow postdocs who will give you first-hand experience about EMBO, and I think a bit about Marie Curie as well. So for my part, before starting, the information I'm presenting here today are from the official guide, which you can download from the EC website. The new version 1.2 has been out for a few weeks now. And I've also used this Survivor's Guide, maybe you're familiar with it. It's from this network of national contact points. It's really helpful. Maybe, I'm sure you are aware of this guide, but it's, if you're not, later on at the end, you can send me a mail. I'll just send this guide to you, because for Marie Curie, the official EC guidelines are quite heavy and not so simple. In this one, they will give you, I mean, the people who have written it, they actually give you a lot of tips. So for me, I just will show you a few of them, but this one is really complete. It will really give you like important information and help you with tips, what evaluators were expecting when they were asking you for this in these sections. So I will strongly recommend this. So for Marie Curie, okay, I'll just go quickly, some background information. Marie Curie actions are part of the excellence pillar in the with a European budget of 6.2 billion. All areas can be funded, and then the key features are bottom-up approach. You have openness. You need to respect the European values, and also you have a big part on mobility, which concerns most of you, I'm sure, now as postdocs. So what's an individual fellowship? It's a personal fellowship to support a period of mobility. It's for experienced researchers who are in the postdoc or equivalent, and there's no upper age limit or lower age limit, and no experience limit in neither. And so with funded fellowship, you can have a stipend to a living allowance. Sometimes you have research costs paid as well, and your host can be academic and non-academic. So for individual fellowships, you have the European Fellowship, which I'll be talking about today, and it's for maximum 2 years for people outside of Europe coming to do this, the Marie Curie in a European country, or for Europeans or non-Europeans already in a European country and staying inside of Europe. And you also have the Global Fellowships, maximum 3 years, including a mandatory 1-year return in a European. So for the European fellowships, you have actually 4 options. You have the standard European fellowship. I'm sure this is the one which concerns most of you. You also have the reintegration panel for people wanting to relocate back to their host country. You have certain eligibility criteria which must be respected for you to be able to apply for this reintegration panel. You have the career restart panel as well, if for various reasons you have had to stop your career for a while. And you also have this new one, which is society and enterprise, whereby the beneficiary is a non-academic, is from the non-academic. So just a quick comparison, like I was saying, the maximum for European fellowship is 24 months. For the global is 36, and you have a mandatory 1 year back in Europe. The host institution for the European fellowship needs to be in a European country or associated country. For the global fellowship, partner organization should be in a third country, and then you have like nationality criteria, and then you have secondment possibilities in both cases. So just for the funding models, those are on your, here you have the cost for the researcher, and for these costs you have coefficients which will apply. These are the basic ones, and then for France you need to apply, I forgot the coefficient number, but you need to apply by 1.11 or something, or for Sweden it's something higher. And this, for this part will be in your fellow salary here in Pasteur, okay? You have to remember this, that's why I put this table here. These are the funding model for Marie Curie, but if you apply and you get the funding, this part will be handled by Pasteur. It will be part of your salary. And you also have this part which will be handled by Pasteur as well, but it will appear in a separate line in your salary. Okay, so like I just said, remember the amounts here will be subjected to tax here in France. There's nothing tax-free here. So don't remember this, sorry. So coming to the project itself, you have the part A and the part B, which will be part of the Marie Curie submission, the proposal. The part A is online. That's where you will come and contact us, because we'll be opening the session for you, put the PIC number, put your relevant information which you will require to continue later on. And then you have the part B. The part B is actually the science part. So now, I mean, I think it's new this year. You need to have two separate documents. You have the first one, which is the one, I mean, really important because, I mean, everything is important, but this one will carry marks, and that's how they will rank you and attribute the scholarship to you. It's a maximum of 10 pages, and you have the excellence part, which is the objectives, the state of the art, the impact, how you go beyond the state of the art, and then the implementation, how you're going to achieve what you just said before. And then the second document, you'll have your CV, maximum 5 pages, a table which you will need to fill up about the host, I mean the facilities they're offering you to do your research. And then if you have ethic issues, when you will see online when you submit your application, you will have a lot of cases to tick asking you whether you're using OGM, whether you're using animals, or whether the products you're using have an impact on the environment. As long as you tick one yes, you will need to put the relevant the relevant document like authorization or whatever here in the appendix of your proposal. Okay, and then the last one, the seventh one, is the letter of commitments for global fellowships. But anyways, once this has been open online, you'll have templates which you download for the part B, and you need to follow the templates. There will be the sections and the subsections which you will need to fill. And once again, the guide I was referring about, the survivor's guide, they will actually go in detail and tell you, I mean, a bit give you ideas how you can fill up the different sections. And so coming to the evaluation, you have panels like chemistry, life sciences panel. I think you'll be in life sciences, most probably. And in each panel, you have 3 experts who will be chosen to assess your proposal. And for the evaluation criteria, as you can see, that's in the first document with the limit of 10 pages. So you have the excellence one, which carries the most weight, and then you have the impact and the implementation. And in case 2 candidates have the same marks, then they will start prioritizing and seeing who got the most, more marks here in the excellence part and everything. Okay, just to show you the 3 big sections making up the 10-page limits, and all these are the subsections. It looks a bit complicated, but in the template, it's well written. And if you go by the tips, it can be an easier task, I might say. Okay, so some tips about writing a good proposal. So to start, you need to find a good acronym. There are, like maybe you're aware of it, there are on the internet, there are certain websites which can help you find a nice acronym, which shouldn't be vulgar in any European languages, by the way. So you need to find a nice acronym, and then you'll come to your abstract. For the abstract part, it depends on you. Some people focus on the abstract first, and then they will develop everything in the full proposals. Or others, they have an idea, they will start with the proposals, and at the end, they will simplify it and make the abstract. So it's up to you. You can always change it. It will be on the website of the EC, but as long as the submission is not final, you can always come back to it and change it as many times as you want. So you should try to use some the most important keywords, etc. You need to, to advertise, to sell yourself in a good way, but do not promise something which will not be found later on in the full proposal. And you should always try to say the project will investigate instead of saying that it will be investigated. Okay, these are the tips I took from the guides. And also in the abstract, you should try as much as possible, avoid talking about background information which will make you lose valuable space because you need to explain them. So afterwards, you download the templates I was telling you about. And just to remind you, when you start developing your proposal for the 10 pages, do not forget the overall weight of each section, but do not spend all your time just for the excellence because everything will count towards your or rejected. So for some common mistakes, you shouldn't tackle your proposal as if you're writing a scientific paper. The objective state of the art, that's the excellent part. It's too elaborate, and then you didn't have time, or you didn't care, you were just too tired, and the implementation is really light and not developed well. Your aims were either too ambitious or unclear completely, and you hadn't focused for the career development, which is quite important here in the Marie Curie actions. And also in online, in the part A, you will need to put some information about, it will create like a mini CV about your experience when you got your degrees, etc. So in your full CV, in the second document, if it doesn't match, they will see it. And one last thing, I'm coming back again to the templates, because when certain evaluators, when they will evaluate your proposals, they will go by the template, because I think either I'm sure they are really tired because they have other things to do. So they will use it, they might use it as a checklist. So if you have not followed the template, with the wrong sections and everything, they can just give you 0 for that subsection, which will be a shame, if you have the information but you didn't follow the template. And one very stupid mistake is you have submitted the wrong draft at the end. So, if we try together to be a bit careful about this, but it can be true. And on the last day, usually you have a heavy traffic on the server and it's not working properly. So you might be stuck with your draft. So I talked a bit already, the evaluators, they want something which is organized, going by how the templates have been constructed, so something organized, consistent, which is flowing. And you have to convince them of the added value of your project in the field you're doing it, and how it's going to develop your own career and also the European Union at large. And then you should focus as well on the quality of the supervision. If you do it in Pasteur, for example, you should be careful when you fill in the tables which will be there. And you should also have like a clear work plan showing how you are, you have really thought well, while constructing your proposal in case there are some problems, the contingency plans, etc. And also, finally, since you do not have a lot of space, it's maximum 10 pages. If you can just put a chart instead of writing 20 lines, for example, just go for it if it's clearer and it helps your proposal. So just to finish on Marie Curie, now the deadline is on the 14th of September. And then you have the evaluation and the outcome probably in February. And earliest is here, but it can be delayed till 12 months before the grant signing. Okay, so success rate for 2014, that's the earliest I found. For the European Standard Fellowship, it's 18.6%, so it's quite okay. And here at Pasteur, we looked a bit in our old files for FP7, the whole program, and a bit starting, the end of FP7, we have around 28 fellows here in Pasteur. Okay, so the guides I was talking about, the official one is the version 1.2, which is available on the EC website. And the unofficial guide is this one I was talking to you about, this National Contact Point Net for Network Mobility. So if you don't have it, you can Google it, but if you cannot find it, just send me a mail and I'll send you one copy. Okay, so going to EMBO, I think this one's, like I said, you'll have your colleagues who will give you first-hand experience. I'll just go really fast. So just we'll focus here on the long term, because you have different kinds of funding for EMBO. It's maximum 24 months. And here the key feature is international exchange. So for the main eligibility criteria, which will be about the same later on for Human Frontier, you need to have a PhD at the start of the fellowship, not at the application, but you need to have it at the start of the fellowship. I think it's not your problem. Most of you have it already here. And you should be very careful about this, because your degree, you should have obtained it maximum 2 years before the deadline. So for here, since we have, for this year, since the deadline is on the 18th, if you have obtained your PhD degree before here, you will not be able to apply for this, you should be at least first author publication accepted. And as well, if you want to apply for this funding and work at Pasteur, you should be very careful. You cannot have been at Pasteur 7 months before the deadline of this EMBO, okay? And as well for the country where the PhD was. Okay, this is, it's not very clear, this, this slide, but you should check, since mobility is really important here, you should check, because they have a bit of eligibility criteria with your nationality and the country where you have obtained your PhD, and it will allow you, if you are an EMBO member state, you have more choices to see where you want to go. In case of associated countries, the choice is a bit less, and you can choose to go to a non-EMBO country or associated country, but this one is the choices are less. But if you're from one of the EMBO states, you can actually choose where you want to go. But it will be clearer if you actually go and download the guidelines, which are quite clear. Okay, so for the evaluation criteria for EMBO, you'll get, if your application is complete, you get a mail like 2 weeks after the deadline telling you your application is complete. And then the process will start. So these are the main, main sections. They will be looking here, your achievements, what you have been proposing, the novel aspect, etc., and whether it's appropriate. The host is providing you with appropriate conditions to reach you, to do what you have said. So for the selection, there's the pre-screening where 2 members of the committee will come together and choose around 2 times more projects, promising projects compared to the available fellowships, and they let you know by email that you have been chosen after the pre-screening 6 weeks, and then if you have been chosen, you'll have an interview. But so an expert in the field will be chosen to interview you, and travel expenses will be reimbursed, etc. And after the interview and everything, the interviewer will be giving his notes, and there will be a second stage whereby there will be a bigger committee, 5 to 6, 7 members who will be meeting and really take into account everything upstream, and they will let you know by around 16 to 18 weeks whether you have been successful or not. So like I was saying, so for 2016, the deadline is the 12th of August. So the earliest possible start date will be January 2000. So just a quick information about the fellowship rate. So you have the stipend. Like I was saying, I'm stressing it again. So in France, it's taxed. So everything you see, you should consider it as a gross amount. So it will be less what you get to take home. There'll be additional allowance for if you have dependents, children, etc. And you also have a travel allowance to and for the institute to go and see your family. And also if you have relocation costs. But if you're already in the institute, you will not get this. So just to give you an idea, for 2016, France first year was nearly 38,000. Second year is a bit higher. And for each dependent, you add 5,700. So the deadline have been open since the 1st of July, and you have till the 8th of July to actually go online and initiate an application. From what I've guessed, because we have never been on the opened the session ourselves, you need to fill up some information, etc., which I think is not really. If you plan to do it, to submit an application, it's a light process, so you should at least initiate it, and because after this deadline you will not be able to submit the full proposal. And then the final deadline for the complete application, etc., is the 12th of August. So for Pasteur, we searched a bit. There are 8 long-term fellows in Pasteur and 2 short-terms. So maybe there are more, but from what we have seen us, because sometimes we are not in the loop since it's not in BPM. So this is from the BPM thing. Okay, so finally on Frontier, so this one is a 3-year fellowship. So you have 2 types, long-term and the cross-disciplinary. It's a bit like EMBO. Main criteria, you should get your PhD by the time it starts. here you cannot have it more than 3 years before the deadline. So if you had it before 1st September 2013, you will not be able to apply to this one. Same here, you need a publication, and then nationals of these, I mean, the Human Frontier can work in any country. Non-national can only go to a Human Frontier country. So it's the same here. I mean, later on, I have some more information on the slide. If you have been, if you want to apply for this in Pasteur and you have been working here prior to 1st April, you will not be able to apply to this one. So we review a bit the same, the excellence of the, I mean, the applicant, the proposed research, etc. And then after these rounds, the highest rated applications will be discussed during a 3-day review, and the final results will be known, I mean, will be sent to you by the end of March 2017 by email. Okay, so the condition is a 3-year maximum. You can, the good thing here, you can actually interrupt it after the 2nd year for up to 2 years. So during that time, if you, for example, after 2 years, you suspend the Human Frontier, you can continue working with another fellowship. So that can be good. And you, after 2 years, you can come back to it again to do the final one, the final year. And for the final year, you have quite a nice opportunities here because you can choose to stay in the same lab. You can move to another country. You can go back to your home country. You can also apply for this Career Development Award, which is $300,000 US over 3 years to set up an independent lab. So it can be quite interesting. So, like I was saying at the start of the fellowship, you should be very careful if you plan to apply for it and you have been in the institution for this year. I mean, before 1st of April, it's not possible to apply for this. Living allowance a bit higher than EMBO, so you have first year for 2017, since the earliest is next year, so it's first year this, a bit higher. You have this research, a bit like Marie Curie, so you have this research and travel allowance to go to conferences, etc., which is quite nice per year.
Hello, so I'm Anna. I'm not sure why I'm here, but I think one of the reasons is that I do a lot of evaluation and reviewing for grants of all types. So I'm basically a member of EMBO, so I have most experience with the EMBO fellowships, long-term fellowships and short-term fellowships and whatever. I'm also a member of a panel of ERC advanced grants, but that's too advanced for you. And I do Swedish research councils. So those are younger guys, so they are more or less at your level. And I've been at the Scientific Council for 4 years, you name it. So I quite like to do it because I like to find the little thing that doesn't sound totally logic in the middle of the wall. And I usually find it. It's a lot of fun. So it's really fun. Okay, anyway. I think what I'm going to tell you, it's not new for you. I'm not going to give you any recipe, and many of the stuff I'm going to tell you was already talked about before by the 2 persons before. What I decided to do instead was to give you the example of 4 case reports, 4 grants that I recently evaluated, 1 of them that got it, and 3 that didn't get it, and the reasons why the one that got it, and the guys that didn't get it, couldn't get it, okay? So I have also to tell you that EMBO is a little more strict than HFSP because I think we are at 10%, 10-12%. When you are below 20%, it's just impossible to evaluate. It's just like tossing the coin up and down, right? That's really the case. And then I have experience with Europe, but again, for more advanced grants. So let's go through this. I think what applies to one will apply to a lot of them. And it's not a secret. The applicant is important. You have to have a good CV. The project is important. The host lab is important. And for EMBO, the interview is important. And then this stuff, I'll explain you what it is. It's not very important. Some people think it's important, some not. I personally don't think it is, but anyway. So what about the applicant? Okay, the applicant has to have a good publication list. what is a good publication list at your level? As he said before, you need to have a first author paper. And in these particular cases, you have to be in a journal that has a good impact factor. I know this is horrible, but that's the way it works. Okay. But I've seen grants being awarded in cases that there was not more than 10 impact factor journal, but you had like 2 publications as a first author with less important journals. I've seen that happening. The only thing I'm going to tell you is that there is no perfect grant application, right? So what you need to do is to be sufficiently objective to see what's your weak point and try to compensate it somehow, okay? So other publications where you are in somewhere in the middle is important because that usually tells us that you are an interactive person, and that is a criteria, a little plus, that if it's very close to borderline, it will count in favor of you. But if you have a lot of publications and you can't even identify that there is a main publication for your work, that's not good either. And if you have 10 publications in the Arte Medica of whatever country, this will not help at all. So it's better to have few and good than to have many and, you know, not structured. Some persons also look at your university marks. I couldn't care less. And I think at your level, probably not. But some persons actually care about that. So it is that much for publication. Okay, the project I think is the most important thing. The project has to be novel for you and for the lab. In other words, the outcome has to be more than the sum of both. What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that you have to bring in something, and the host lab have to bring in something to construct something that's bigger than 1 + 1, if you see what I mean. The combination, so that's what I mean by the combination of the two should be more than the sum of both. Then there has to be a biological question that has to be clearly stated. The person that's reading has to understand immediately what you want to find, okay? That's very important. State-of-the-art technology, that is the gadgetry, fancy gadgetry, that is important, that counts. For the very simple reason, not only because of the bling-bling, but also because you're not inventing a new biological question. It's very unlikely. What we do all the time is to revisit old questions. But in order to revisit old questions and find something new, we have to do something different, right? And I think in the moment, one of the different things are technology. So either you bring in a novel technology into the lab, or the lab has just developed a technology and you bring in some conceptual new view that will apply that new technology. This is usually a very good combination. Then I'll say the same thing as he says. You have to be clear in the outline and you have to be short because we have a limited attention span. We read it fast. We are trained, we read it through, we have 2 or 3 points that we check in our brain, if not in paper, and if they are not there, all made for you, if you make us look through the grant what we want to find out, it's not very good, because we will get fed up, we will get irritated, and that's not at all good. So it has to be short and clearly stated and clearly outlined. So if you're not a native English speaker, I'm not a native English speaker, for instance, have it reviewed by either the host supervisor or somebody that is a native English speaker, and have your English corrected. Now there is another one, and you'll see why I wrote this last sentence. There are nowadays some really interesting interdisciplinary projects that bring together mathematics, biology, systems biology, you name it. If you're applying for one of those, that's great, because we tend to like it, but be careful. Don't be naive about the part you are less knowledgeable in. Try to be trained to answer any question about the project as a whole. And I had recently one case that failed totally in this point, and that was the reason why I didn't get it. Much for the project. The host lab is also very important because if it's a senior PI, it has to be sufficiently international visibility and has to have had recent major contributions. If it's a junior PI, it has to be a promising track record, okay? You know, like one of those going up guys. And the institution is, of course, also very important because it tells us whether you have the right environment, both intellectually and technologically. Okay. Okay, so if you are in EMBO, you need to do an interview. I never do interviews where I invite people to come. I do everything through Skype, okay? And most people now do it like that. There's no reason to pay for trips to go somewhere because Skype is as good and gives the right type of information. Okay, so if you are doing a Skype interview like that, it's much better if you are fluent in English. You have to be able to speak and to understand, of course, otherwise it's going to be a mess. You need to be a good communicator. Not everybody is a good communicator, but if you are not a good communicator, please train beforehand, okay? Because that's really important. The other thing you need is that you have to have thought through the project in some depth, okay? And the reason I say that is that every project has weak points and strong points, and you need to know both of them clearly. Every single project that has a weak point, you have to imagine the plan B in case it doesn't work. Give them alternatives. Give the idea that you thought about it and you consider all possible problems that can happen, and I can tell you, and you guys know already by now, anything that can go wrong will certainly go wrong, right? So know exactly what are your weak points and your strong points, and don't try to defend the project blindly. You cannot defend, don't try to defend what cannot be defended, right? If there is a strong point, so a weak point, state it clearly to the interview. I think this is a weaker part, but I know how to solve it. And that's the way to go for it. So have a plan B. And of course, if you are excited about your work, it's much more fun. Pedigree. What do I mean by pedigree? Of course, if you come from a very good lab, very famous lab, with a very famous supervisor, and you did something in that lab, that is a plus. Why is that a plus? That's a plus because those labs are usually somewhat wild in the sense that you have many postdocs, many people working, sometimes even in the same projects. If you made it there, it means that you can survive in a hard environment. And that is important because the environment is going to become really hard as you go on. I can tell you, okay? And this is sort of a joke. Of course, if you work with a Nobel Prize winner and you made it there, maybe it's a plus, but maybe it's not. So this is very relative, but it's usually a good plus. All right, so now I have 4 case reports for you. And I'm going to tell you each of them. I'm going to tell you the story of each of them. Of course, this is, I'm not going to tell you names because we cannot. But I'm going to tell you more or less the story of the interview and the story of the application. So the first one got it. It was an individual coming from a Western European country that had an excellent track record. He had the first author paper in immunity for you guys that are not immunologists. And what I'm going to say applied mainly for biology. If you go into mathematics, biophysics, it's a completely different way to evaluate, because the papers are usually many authors, you don't have the impact factor, blah, blah, you name it. So this guy was a candidate from a Western European country, had an excellent track record. With the first author paper in immunity, we are talking impact factors of 20-something. And 3 other publications, one in Science, Nature, Immunology, and Blood, in the middle author. So it was, of course, a lab that published very well, and applied to go to a country that I think is sort of not really European community, but associated or whatever, Switzerland. So the project was actually not fantastic, I have to say. The project was built around imaging technology. It was an imaging technology that had been developed recently by the host lab to ask important questions about lineage commitment in a simple, albeit artificial system. So it was done, everything was in vitro, and it was an approach to look at lineage commitment in vitro, which I think it's extremely difficult to do. However, there was a lot of technologically elegant wizardry, you know, things that light up and went down when the cell saw a stimulus. So there was some stimulation in vitro that, of course, was probably never going to happen exactly like that in vivo, but still. And the candidate had a theoretical knowledge that was not available in the host lab, so there was a full complementarity. So they came together, one guy that had a very strong theoretical background on an issue and that wanted to ask very new questions using the technology that was sort of complemented by the lab. And that sort of gave a good combination of... I didn't find out yet how this works. This is not good. Okay, the host laboratory. The host laboratory was a young guy, not a senior PI. Even a little controversial in that, you know, some people say this guy went too high with too little, but a young guy that had published extremely well in the last years, very good recent track record, new technology and new views of old problems. So this was sort of okay, but this, I think this was what actually made the difference. The interview was a lot of fun, because the guy was super interactive. He had thought about everything that could go wrong. He had planned this for everything. He was excited, enthusiastic, interesting, clever, could even discuss. We came up with new ideas of new experiments. It was fun. Even for me, it was fun. I think for him probably also. The interview was excellent. The critical evaluation of risk and gains was perfectly done. The guy was very interactive, very imaginative and clever, lots of plan Bs. And he had a good pedigree, came from one of the best labs in Europe because he had published sciences and immunities and God knows what. So this guy got it. It was great. And now I'm going to tell you the story of 3 guys that did not get it. Okay. Did not get it. Okay. So the first that did not get it was a candidate that came original from a Far East country. So she was not from a European country. She hadn't done the PhD or the education in an European country. She came from China. She had an excellent track record with the first author paper in cell stem cell. Cell stem cell is more or less the same as immunity, 20th impact factor. And the Journal of Genetic Genomics, co-second in blood, which is pretty good, 10s and something, and applied to go to England. Okay? The project was not good. The project was just the extension of the PhD. So this person and the host lab did exactly the same thing. So she was just moving to Europe to do the same thing, to continue to do the same thing as she was doing and that the host lab has been doing for the whole time. So, so there was no novelty, there was no added value there. The project was not original, there was no technological breakthrough. Okay, so that was not fantastic. So the host laboratory is excellent and well respected. It's a senior PI, not a young PI. Very good recent track record, so that was good. One of the best in the field in Europe, so it's considered to be top. That's okay. The interview was not fantastic, although I have to say that, so the English was not perfect, but that would have been okay. The main problem was that there were no critical evaluation of risk and gains. So the person did not evaluate beforehand what could go wrong and how could this person overcome if it went wrong, okay? She was a fighter. She put up a good defense, that was okay. She had a good understanding of the basic problem, but the project had not been sufficiently thought through. So this person did not get it, okay? And the main reason for not getting it is that there was no added value on the project in complementarity with the host lab, and that this person was trying to defend things that could not be defendable, or that didn't make much sense to be defended, if you see what I mean. Okay, second, they did not get it. Candidate from a Western European country that wanted to stay in Europe, so that's usually okay. Excellent track record, 2 first author papers in Blood, no middle author publication. So that's pretty good, all the chances there. The project was nice, so it was a new project. The person was changing completely the field. That's also important, that you change what you're doing somehow. If you stay to do always the same thing, that's usually not very good. It's a good novel project, exciting question, although methodology was old-fashioned. Okay, not too bad. So the main problem here was the host lab. It is a senior, well-respected host lab in the field, but it had not done much in the last 10 years or so. 10 years is a long time already. So the track record was good, but not fantastic. The interview had been excellent, critical evaluation of risk and gains, very interactive. And I think this person was probably almost making it. So the only thing I do in those is that I write a report. And I say what are the weaks and the strongs. And then they somehow sort it out in their meetings. So I think this person was probably almost making it, although because they are at 10% or even less sometimes, I don't know. She didn't get it. But the main reasons why she didn't get it was that the host lab was not thought to be that fantastic, and because there were no technology and innovation behind it. So, you know, it could have been done anywhere, anyhow. And then the third, and I'm almost finished. It's another person that didn't get it. This one had a completely different problem. This one was a candidate from a Western European country, outstanding track record, although not in basic biology. It was a mathematician systems biologist. So it had a really good track record because he had 2 first author papers in PNAS, which is pretty good, and one on biochemical, biophysical research communications, which I have no idea what it is. But the guy was in a top lab on systems biology in Europe. And he actually made an application to go overseas. So this guy wanted to go to Canada. So that's usually not fantastic because EMBO doesn't like so much to pay people to go overseas. Okay? The project was extremely interesting and interdisciplinary. He wanted to analyze stem cell behavior. So, you know, I go a lot on stem cells because that's one of the stuff I do, including immunology, to analyze stem cell behavior with the systems biology approach. Outstanding molecular biology. So the host lab was fantastic in molecular biology. Technical, elegant wizardry. Used the candidate systems biology knowledge that was not available in the host laboratory and established a valuable collaboration with an outstanding stem cell laboratory in situ. However, the stem cell project was a little bit naive. And of course, this guy had no idea about stem cells. This guy knew about mathematics and was learning molecular biology. So, the host laboratory was very good, young, respected scientist, very good recent track record, new technology and new views of old problems. So this was plus, everything. The interview was not good. And why wasn't it good? Because the candidate, although he was articulated and spoke very good English, he had not thought about the experiments on the stem cells. So he had no foggy idea what the hell he was going to do with those things. He just knew that he was going to get some stuff from this guy next door. He had no idea what the stuff was. How could he make it any better in case that stuff was not working okay? He was entirely relying on the collaborator that is an excellent collaborator, but probably was not thinking about that stuff with as much depth as his, because it was not his project, right? So he had no idea about the alternative experiments that could be done. He just told me at one point, well, you know, I have no idea about that. I entirely rely on that guy. And that was death. Okay. So the pedigree was very good. It was on one of the best non-labs in Europe in the field, but it was not. So this is...
There is no like this. Yeah, I prefer like this. Yeah, so thanks for inviting. I hope I can like help a bit in this blurry thing of applications. So I will also explain a little what is my project about, so that you can see how I adapted the project. What I'm doing is looking for a family of cells that are called innate infused cells in zebrafish. And just to tell you, like, as you know, the immune system has two main arms, the adaptive and the innate being more ancient in evolution. Recently, it's moving, in the immune system. So I went to Germany and then I wanted to change the model, so from zebrafish to mouse, and also change the subject to developmental biology to immunology. Okay? So with this background, I thought, these cells are known, these are a new family of cells, have been described in mammals, in human and mouse, but nothing was known about fish. So the project is about finding the cells in zebrafish. So then how to, that is divided mainly in two parts, like finding the cells and then doing functional study of one cytokine that is produced by these cells. Okay, and I studied this cytokine in mouse. Now, how to justify that this project is, like, let's say, of relevance? I say that this project will allow to understand the evolution. So now I come with the word evolution, that is, like, let's say, from wide liking. And I will be able to compare these cells and cytokine networks between fish and mammals. So that is the evolution part. But you know that there are scientists that don't care about evolution. They will tell you we need just a cure for a disease, right? So also to cope with that part, I also say that this is an alternative and complementary model to study mucosal immunology. And in zebrafish, there are many things you cannot do in other models, like you can do dark screenings, stuff like that. So let's say to keep happy people that think that science should be only about basic research or like more biomedical and applied, I try to put both things there. Okay. So about the fellowships, I did a little scheme. So what I did actually, when I was still in Germany, on September 2014, I applied to the Cantarini Roux, which is an internal fellowship of Institut Pasteur, which I got for 2 years. They told me very fast that I got it, as you can see here, only to 1 month. Then I came here about August and September 2015. I applied to EMBO, Human Frontiers, and Marie Curie. One of the reasons was because then I had my papers accepted. So before, at this date, my papers were not accepted. And also because I wanted to see the institute, the lab. I don't want to commit so long first without knowing if I would like to stay longer. So once I was in the lab, I thought, okay, I want to stay here. I want to apply for longer stuff. So I applied to EMBO, to Human Frontiers, to Marie Curie. The Human Frontiers I didn't get. I got the EMBO and the Marie Curie. And about what I did with the Cantarini helped me to have funding for 1 year, and then I used the rest of the Cantarini to cover the taxes of the EMBO, and then there is, yes, and then there should be a very thin line here that is to cover the little amount you still need to cover what Yoan was saying. You still need a little bit of money to cover your salary, your full salary, even you got a Marie Curie. So that was useful. Another thing that is very important is I got to know from people that applied to EMBO and to Marie Curie before there was an agreement that you could have both fellowships and you could choose like 1 year one and 2 years the other one. So when I got both, I started to email EMBO and Marie Curie, so what about this? And they told me, sorry, there is no more agreement. But I realized the Marie Curie fellowship, you could push for later the starting date, and I could push it until 1st of September 2017. So what I did was to start the EMBO and tell the guys to the EMBO, hey, can I use the EMBO for 18 months and then switch to Marie Curie so then I don't have them at the same time? They both say yes, so that is what I did. And so, but was a lot of emailing with not only EMBO, Marie Curie, Cantarini, human resources here. My boss didn't know what was going on, but the thing is like asking and asking and asking, it worked. That is the point. Something that we were asking, and also in the other fellowships, like what is the motivation to choose this lab? And then of course you need to put what I learned, what they learned from me, and what is the synergy that is between the two things, like the me and them. The Human Frontiers actually was quite interesting because in the web page there are many resources about how to apply for fellowships, and they really want people that are very independent, and they show that there is a change in research direction. About the resources they have, for example, I don't know if you can see here. There are even, so when you go to postdoctoral fellowship, this is all the links you will see, the sublinks, and there are even like books about art of grantsmanship. I just want to read you this phrase: grantsmanship is the art of acquiring peer-reviewed research funding, and it's very good. I really recommend it. I just showing with you the president of Human Frontiers, Carmen Garbe. She was saying, for example, in an interview, we want tips for applying to Human Frontiers and private. You need to show there is a change in direction. You need to show that the project is risky, pioneering. Also, that is more important about like, oh, I'm going to do a lot. Like I want to do something clever and new. And for example, what areas of life sciences do you fund? Areas of the Human Frontiers that does not fund include applied clinical research, drug development. So you immediately realize like they want people that they are doing physics and they wanna do something alive, for example. So therefore, what I did for my project is I focused more into evolution and theories of evolution. I mean, it didn't work, but at least I got in So the answer of them was like, although we cannot offer you fellowship, your application was ranked and you are in reserve list. And then later they asked me, hey, did you get another fellowship? Because if you did, you should like drop like your application. So that is what I did, because then I knew that they want you to show that you will do something about outreach, so you will disseminate somehow to the public, to the normal public, your results. So you need to write something about it. Of course, what was very useful is that Marie Curie gives you an evaluation sheet that I got from other people, and you can even Google and you will find evaluation sheets from any other field, but it's very, because, I mean, it's very small here. This is how it looks, like 2 pages, where you see all the different criteria, excellence, impact, implementation. They tell you like all the points, and they'll tell you like there are strengths, weaknesses. So you can really evaluate that. Like in my case, I was lucky I didn't have more weaknesses. But for example, here's one, like potential risks related to the experimental plan are not sufficiently addressed. But as overall was fine. But I really recommend you to find this, to look for these evaluation sheets, because they really help. You need to wait a bit. And another thing, like, so yeah, I got help. I got also projects from other people from Pasteur. On internet, the application is complicated, and there is a lot of nomenclature that is specific for the European Commission, like new words I never heard before. There are many. On one side is good, because then you can continue, you already got that language, but it's complicated, and therefore you can find PowerPoints from Karolinska or from other universities where they explain you step by step how to apply to this, in case you don't find good help or enough help from here. For example, when I sent and I contacted people from grant office, they told me like you need to highlight importance of the project, also make schemes. So then I started to make schemes. And you will see, like, also for people working in gut-brain axis or whatever kind of research, it's very good to have a scheme showing what you want to do. Also some Gantt schemes. And for example, for the human frontiers, I focus more in evolution, and because of what they told me in the grant office, like I started the project saying, understanding how the different members of the immune system work together to protect us against disease has a strong impact in public health. So totally different story from one application and to the other one. And you read in agencies that you can obtain money for research, not being a PI, not being a
permanent researcher. And this is the case of the ANR. Actually depends on the institution, depends on human resources here, if they allow you to apply. So I already contacted them, and of course they were like, then there is the problem, you know, the 4 years and a half, that is the maximum you can have a not permanent contract, a CDD. But for the ones that are not Europeans, you need to be aware that that rule only runs for European citizens. For non-European citizens, we can stay longer. So just one little tip. You see? So that's it. Another tip that came to my mind, well, it was the other ones were presenting like about the EMBO interview. I think having the interview and going there is very nice. I prefer than Skype, because face-to-face, and also then in my case I went to London, so it was nice. I met some friends. And what I realized during my EMBO interview was and I know from like there are many scientists that they don't understand very well what is your topic, but they push the interview to their topic. You know, like they keep the conversation there. So she didn't know about zebrafish, and she knew about immunology a lot. It was Brigitta Stockinger, and she was always pushing like the stuff to her field and asking me, how is my thing in zebrafish? And I was like, I'm like trying to bluff a bit. I mean, it worked. But the recommendation is read the papers and go there, and you need to know what they are doing, because if they cannot make any question about your stuff, they will start going to their field. And another thing, so in my case, I applied in my unit there is the head of the unit, and I'm working with a researcher there that is not the head of the unit, and I applied to all this fellowship saying that my supervisor will be the head of the unit because he has just better curriculum, and that's it. At the end, okay. I leave the guy there.
You can introduce yourself before. But well, Kartik will talk about a little bit about the interview. I think we had a lot of feedback from one already, but I think this is the view of us that goes there and how you feel when you were there in the interview.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So I am Kartik. I am working in the Department of Stem Cells and Developmental Biology, and I am an EMBO Fellow, so I'll be more talking about how the EMBO interview goes. I have never attended a Marie Curie interview, so I don't know. But I guess it will be more or less the same. There is no interview? Okay. Okay, so like Anna mentioned before, interview is a more critical part of the evaluation of an EMBO fellowship. Be careful about during the interview. The first thing is, before you go to the interview, just be thorough with what you have written in your CV, because sometimes what happens is the interviewing PI could suggest an experiment. You know how to analyze microarray data. Why don't you look at public literature, analyze data, and then carry on your project? And that means he has read your CV and he knows that you can analyze microarray data. And at that time, you cannot bluff. You should be able to go with it and complement what the So preparation is the key for the interview. Preparation is everything. You have to be prepared beforehand. You have to have talks, a lot of presentations. You have to know your data. You have to know your audience. You have to be prepared for tough questions. But most importantly, you have to have your slides in an ordered manner. There has to be a structure where you don't go from one point to another without a connection. You don't skip slides. You have to have adequate number of slides that need to be presented in approximately 40 minutes and not too more, not too less. So you must be excellent in presentations, in giving presentations and delivery of the content, and always have a backup to your soft file just in case the equipment doesn't work, your pen drive crashes. You should have it on the server, whatever, on your email. Take 10 backups, whatever backup you can think of, and make sure there are no errors. Spell check thoroughly, very thoroughly, and ask someone else to proofread, because you made it. You might skip your own mistakes sometimes. And you must handle questions well. You should not try to bluff. You should not try to get around questions and avoid questions. You should not be saying like, maybe I had it in my head, I'm forgetting it at the moment. No, that doesn't work at that time. You have to be thorough. You have to have given a mock presentation in your lab, in front of your PI. Just be thorough with it as possible. So who will be there? There can be academic staff, like PI, his collaborator, his friend, another PI, postdocs, PhD students, sometimes technical staff. So you have to be careful what you are saying and to whom you are saying. Sometimes after you leave the presentation, the PI will ask, so how did you feel? How did you feel? The PI would ask, even the technical staff sometimes. Was it clear to everyone, your presentation? Was it understandable, doable, and stuff like that? Okay. So what is the purpose of the interview? The main purpose is to explore your scientific competency, look at your communication skills, motivation, ability to work on a team, flexibility, whatever you can think of, for a general presentation as well, for any other presentation you would ever give, and to verify facts about your experience and qualifications. So if you say that I'm going to work with mice, does your CV say have you ever worked with mice? If no, where are you going to learn, how you're going to learn, how fast, and what you're going to do with it after. So just to complement what you're going to learn with what you already know, and that's what EMBO also focuses on. Like Pedro mentioned just before, that what you bring to the lab, what the lab adds on to your skills, and the synergy between the two. So on the day of the interview, most important thing is to be on time. Check your train schedules, check if it's running late, whatever. Double check the time zone if you're traveling to a different time zone. Early is on time is late, and late is inexcusable. So it's an important interview, and you are applying for a fellowship. So that will be for the next 2 years. And just a minor point to dress appropriately. Don't wear a lot of perfume. A little bit is okay, not too much. Don't wear jewelry like the watch, making sound when you're presenting. So it's not a good idea. Be neat, clean, and simple. Yeah, so the first 5 minutes of the interview are extremely, extremely important. How you begin your presentation, what you are going to say in the first 2 or 3 slides to your introduction, that gives you an impression how firm you are in the background and how well you know your project that you're going to talk about. So just be confident, not overconfident. You should be energetic, enthusiastic. If you are traveling by train, don't sleep too much in the train because you will look sleepy after you reach your destination. Be honest, be professional. By be honest, I mean especially like things or stuff you don't know in a presentation. You should admit, okay, this part is, like Anna mentioned, this part is weak, this part I don't know. Don't fight to prove something that cannot be proven. And you should know what those points are in your presentation. Don't overclaim, and also don't bluff. So know your stuff and avoid jargon. Avoid too much jargon, complicated vocabulary, and try to be simple. Explain it as simply as possible, but clearly, so that the person research the laboratory that you are going to give an interview in. Sometimes you will be interviewing a PI that might not be related to the field, like the example of the mathematician who was going to work on stem cells, but most probably the interviewing PI will be asking specific questions related to your expertise and what his expertise, where they overlap. So you should research the laboratory, what questions could be asked. That would be a good idea to look at the publications of the lab, and practice, like I mentioned earlier. Be thorough with the literature, give several mock presentations, and go through your presentation over and over. What I did personally, like I took a printout, and in the train I just saw it 2 or 3 times before reaching the lab going to present. So there are some general questions. How do you fit in with the existing knowledge? What more would you contribute? What collaborations do you plan or do you propose? And these are some of the general questions which are less likely asked questions. Are the specific questions, like what are the latest techniques that you would apply? What would be what new would you be learning? How long will it take? And will you be able to manage your proposed project within a given time frame? I was asked this like three times during my presentation because I was changing my field from my PhD to my postdoc. Okay, the strategy or experiments suggested should be optimal to address the question. The question should be answered by that technology, and the technology should be able to answer that question. They should complement. If you have technical issues, what would be your alternate strategy? Plan B. So that's really, really very important, like Anna mentioned before, and I would suggest like you should have a plan B, plan C, plan D, whatever. You should have backups. You should have read about it, thought about it, and spend time on it beforehand, like a lot of time. If you have some preliminary data, it will be good to show. If you have already started in the host lab, of course, there are cases, like in my case, I had joined the host lab before and then I applied for the EMBO. If not, then you could talk to the hosting PI and ask for probable limitations or something that has been already published related to your stuff, but not what you're going to do. So novelty is really important, but also good to talk to the host PI beforehand. So sometimes at the end of the interview, the interviewing PI would ask, okay, so do you want to ask anything? Is it okay for you? So be curious and ask questions that you generally want to know the answers to. If the interviewing PI had asked the question that you don't know the answer to, and you want to like you are genuinely curious about it and you want to ask him, okay, so what would you suggest? It's no harm to ask the PI and discuss. Like Anna mentioned, that it's a good way to interact and also maintain a long-term relationship. It can also bring probable collaboration in the future. So general advice: self-assess yourself critically, looking at your skills, abilities, strengths, weaknesses, interests, and work ethics. Be careful about the timing. Respect the timing. If a PI, so you exchange mails with the hosting PI beforehand, at least a month before, you know the date. So you set up a date and you ask the PI, okay, will the presentation be for half an hour, 1 hour? How long do you want it to be? Will it be a discussion or a lab meeting kind of scenario? And if you are well informed, if you're well read, if you know your subject, the interviewing PI will know. You will stand out from the crowd. Just to give you some example, I wrote these emails beforehand to confirm a suitable date and time for the interview. If there's a visa issue for your passport, just clarify before. And then in case of a reminder, you could also suggest a date. It's good to send a reminder after a few days in case you don't get a reply, but a gentle one. And in the end, it's a good idea after the interview to send a thank you email or acknowledging that the PI had spent time to go through your presentation and discuss. And then when you are approved, it's also a good idea to inform that, okay, thanks for your time and your support and advice. So, get the fellowship. Don't forget to go back to your host organization and get to know the rules, how much money you're going to get, how much is the brood charge, and how much is going to go away, and how you are going to get it in.
European Respiratory Fellow, and he will tell us a little bit how about other fellowship opportunities that are available out there, and that can be a better fit for you maybe.
Okay, since I'm the last talk and you guys are probably pretty full with most of all this information, I kind of wanted to kind of give a talk that's a little maybe more upbeat and maybe give you at least a small bit of hope trying to get a fellowship. So this talk will be more about trying to broaden one's horizon, kind of think outside of the box. And so of course all we do is talk about the EMBOs and the Marie Curie, but you got to realize, yeah, these are the big ones, or maybe they're the prestigious ones. There is a ton of money out there outside of these. And if you just go to the EMBO site right now, this is what you find, that there's all these types of societies and things like that. They're all sourcing for money. And some of them are full fellowships for 2 years, but some of them are smaller, short-term fellowships or travel grants. It kind of doesn't matter. You just need some money so you can have a job and do your science. So start thinking about, you don't need to just go to the Marie Curie site. You can start checking out your societies. Or some examples. This is a society fellowship, which was on the list. It's a long-term fellowship. And, it's the Biochemical Society. So if you're a biochemist, you're probably part of the society. You should check out that site to see if they're giving out fellowships. So that fellowships are relevant at this particular time. So you're going to have to do your due diligence to see if there is money available. But there's also companies that can give you money. So this is Gilead. This is a big pharma company, and they do all kinds of research, HIV, hepatitis, oncology, whatever. They give fellowships, and this particular calling, although I think it's closed now, was for UK and Ireland fellowships. So if you want to travel or move outside of France, these are the types of things. So don't forget to start looking in companies as well, especially big pharma companies. This is another company one, and of course some of these fellowships, especially for companies and societies, they have their own agenda. They're always like, they want to, focus in on one particular type of scientist. This particular one is for women. They want to promote women in science. So, this particular money, it's only about 20,000 euros a year, so it's not enough to pay for your full salary or things like that, but it's still money, and it makes you more attractive to your PI. And if you want to go outside of Europe and you want to go across, especially if you want to go to the States, you got to start looking at NIH. And they all have caveats for foreigners coming into the countries. And of course, if you're American there, they have caveats in their fellowships as well for you to do your research abroad. So just more things is that you don't have to focus just on your country, start looking around. So then we come to my fellowship. I have a society fellowship. And it just happens that a call just opened up, which will be in October, so I get to kind of promote it a little bit. And it's for the European Respiratory Society. And it's one of these joint fellowships between the European Respiratory Society and Marie Curie. And you can see that they have a whole whack of different types of joint fellowships from EMBO, Marie Curie. They have short-term, long-term, travel grants. They have all kinds that you can go after. So you need to look. Now, why this one was, I found this one because my project happens to be on respiratory science, so it was kind of a good fit. Kind of key features of this particular fellowship and why this, I think, is sometimes more attractive than the regular Marie Curies or the EMBOs and things like that, is because you can see that they factor in a bunch of additions on top of a regular Marie Curie that make it more attractive because you are now their kind of like golden researcher. They pick a very small group of researchers that fit their agenda and they want to just promote the hell out of you. So you can see that they got fellowships in their 24 to 36 months, which is great, it gives you some long term. You can see the amount of money of this fellowship is 71,000 euros a year. Now that does combine a 56,000 euro gross living allowance as well as a 14,600 mobility allowance per year. So, of course, Pasteur's going to eat up a lot of that. But nonetheless, you could use this and pay for your full salary, and this would make you very attractive for your PI because now you might be basically not cost them any money. Maybe. And then also with these society fellowships, and I think the Marie Curie and some of the other ones are really starting to focus on, and it was a big deal on my application is they're focused on career development. So this was the Respiratory Society, and they wanted people to come into the Respiratory Society, because I didn't do respiratory science before I came here, and make a whole career out of it, move on and early development. So I'll then go and start my own respiratory lab somewhere doing my type of research. They put a lot of emphasis on that, but also they put a lot of money behind it where they give you all for things like they promote you big time where they put you on their website and show you off. They pay for you to go to their meetings, and because it's the ERS Society, they host several meetings a year, so they get you to do that. They set you up with a mentor in another lab, so almost like you have a PhD advisor again in the field that you want to be. So my project is also part immunology, even though I'm not an immunologist. So they paired me up with a good lab in Germany, an immunology lab, so that they could help me build my career and build my networking. And that is a pretty cool aspect, especially when I'm on my third postdoc. So now I'm thinking about starting my own lab, and it's this early career development, and they have so many caveats, and they put so much emphasis on that for my PI right now that he has to meet a ton of these mandates. And I don't think some of the more generic fellowships, like the EMBO and the Marie Curie, put that much emphasis on it. So looking out, that maybe some of these society fellowships or company fellowships might be very attractive for some of us. So just to kind of finish up, to kind of give you a bit of hope. So why I got a fellowship? Well, I didn't have any Cells, Natures, or Science papers, or PNAS papers. I didn't have 2 first authors, which is okay. No, I didn't have any of that. I don't have a ton of publications. I don't have a huge H index either, even for my mediocre publications. Also, my PI does not have any Science, Cell, and Nature papers either, or even a PNAS paper. So basically, you can still do it even though you're not a superstar, you're not stellar, depending on things. But what was important is high caliber institute, we're at Pasteur, so that there's a lot of weight behind the institute. So when you're going for these fellowships, you're going outside. Think about that. You may love the science, but they're at some, rinky-dink little research facility at the North Pole. They're going to be like, well, you don't have any facilities there. How are you going to actually do research? So I had the institute behind me, and I guess my project was pretty, kick-ass. It had a lot of quality and impact, and it made a big difference in my field, and that's why it probably got funded. Not so much because I have this huge pedigree and lots of papers. So there is hope even for, us mortal researchers. And all I got is good luck.